the Event and Marketing Chair of Focus. What a wonderful day. I'm very happy to say that we have over 750 registration for this important webinar. For Focus, this is a record registration, and all of you must be aware, we are continuously running knowledge series webinar since last 2 months. Previously, we had on similar elevator, we had vertical transportation, again by Mr. Tak. So today, the topic is, all of you are aware, it is all about fireman's lift. There are many questions, many doubts we have on this subject. And as all of you know, Tak is the convener of the National Building Code. And ladies and gentlemen, Focus, it's a platform of all critical services, verticals coming together. If you want to build a resilient building, we need all professionals coming together. You need all the critical services to be seen and shown in one single dashboard. What is the occupancy in the building? What is the fire pump pressure? What is the electrical consumption? So what kind of, the air quality you have in a building? So all this need to be integrated. The objective, the mission of Focus is to how do you integrate all this and make a building a resilient building. I appeal to all my friends who are registered and who's participating in it, come forward and let's go make our country, our nation, every building a resilient building. And also it's a global initiative. We have our president, Mr. Suresh on the screen. We have chairman of vertical transportation, Mr. Tak Matthew. We have our keynote address, the director of Maharashtra Fire, Mr. Santosh Warik. Our general secretary, Mr. A.L. Narasimhan. And our sponsor and also the speaker, Deepak Prashant and Arul Prakash. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to play the Focus corporate video, which is around 2 minutes, to explain what is our mission and vision of Focus. Mamata, can you play the corporate video?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are delighted to present to you the Forum of Critical Utility Services, the acronym of which is FOCUS. Much as the acronym suggests, the role of the Forum of Critical Utility Services is to bring in focus all that concerns the construction industry. This is not just for India, but for a coordinated construction industry world over. For those of you who may not be aware, this initiative is to prepare and present a platform where all the verticals of the critical utility services of the construction industry forge into one formidable group that will strive in building unity, aid in diffusing misconceptions, and present itself as a platform for discussions amongst these bodies of professionals. This initiative was born on the 26th of October 2020, when the world was almost silent from the after effects of the pandemic. We say silent because the cry for help and riddance from the clutches of the pandemic were deafening. There simply was no place that was safe anywhere in the world. None of the formidable structures that man had erected was safe for protection from the pandemic. It was during these times that we decided on creating a platform so as to be able to present improved and concerted methodologies of developing projects that shall not just be sustainable or resilient, but also deliver safe environment and a valuable business opportunity to the promoters, not just for some time, but for long time to come. Times when another generation will inherit the good work that we do today. Our efforts begin with drawing the strength from the fields of architecture, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, safety, fire, security, illumination, vertical transportation, IBMS and IT, solid waste management, and last but not the least, facility management. Bring them together and forge them into one strong wheel of change to deliver structures that stand in harmony with Mother Nature on planet Earth. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is our mission. Only when we come together and share our ideas and aspirations will we find the stumbling blocks. It is here then that when we are together and focused towards one goal, we will jointly be able to understand and address our challenges as one formidable force. Not just a force in India, but for a global movement that will find solutions, opportunities, and the means to address productivity, safety, quality, developing skills, training, evolving standards, and ensuring their implementation, thereby becoming centers of excellence and setting benchmarks for generations to pursue and improve. And this is our vision. We have embarked upon reaching out to various verticals of the critical utility services. We will thereafter jointly present our cause to the government and policymakers. We will present our vision to the builders, and we are confident that we will break the shackles of inequality, indifference, ignorance, and mistrust, and build a world that is one with nature. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not here to conjure a forum, but we are here to establish a body that shall have trust, integrity, and honesty for its foundation, and stand on the pillars of knowledge, commitment, enthusiasm, and foresight of its people. Our invitation to you is open. Come and become a part of Focus. It is your contribution and support to Focus that will make a difference to the new India that is being created. Let's join and make this the Bharat that we wear, shining, prosperous, bright, and a true world leader. Let's now focus.
Hi, Mamta, can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Tak, can you see the screen?
It's coming. It's good. All good.
Okay, wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Focus for You, Forum of Critical Utilities Services, which was born on October 26, 2020. We have 3 chapters across India today. Over 250 members as of, all the engineering professionals have joined, including architect and infrastructure companies. I am sure you will join and strengthen the focus and be a true global society from India. We also want to thank our sponsor, Vitor. And with us today, we have the Vitor India President, Mr. Suraj Thodimarat. Welcome to you, sir. And just before I introduce our keynote speaker, I just want to let the participant know that next week on Thursday, we have very important webinar. How do we contain a fire in hospital and prevent spreading of fire in hospital? I would request everyone to register. We'll be sending through your email and inviting to register. This is for the next Thursday. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always a great pleasure to introduce Mr. Santosh Warik, the passionate, very committed officer in the country. He is the Chief Fire Officer, Fire Advisor to MIDC, and Director, Maharashtra Fire. He is a science graduate, fire engineer from National Fire Services, Nagpur, an MBA in finance, and a law graduate. My God, he has everything. All ingredients are there with a fantastic fire officer. He has 28 years of experience in the field of fire prevention and protection. He served on various positions in MIDC Fire Services. One of the architects in drafting the India's first Maharashtra Fire Act. And today, Maharashtra Act is been replicated in various other states in the country. An expert in firefighting various occupancies, implementation of fire preventions and life safety measures as per National Building Code of India. He has successfully handled various industrial projects, special townships, SEZs, and IT parks in Maharashtra. I now welcome Mr. Santosh Warik and address the gathering. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dominic, for that nice introduction. And also, thank you for choosing this critical subject, which was not discussed on various platforms. Basically, fire lifts and fire tower, these are the very good provisions in National Building Code, which was introduced in 1983. But unfortunately, it was not that much got popularized. Now, due to high-rise buildings, we have to have such kind of a provisions in high-rise building to reach on upper floors in case of any fire. So that is very crucial and essential component of a building envelope, wherein to reach on the upper floor for carrying out firefighting and rescue operation in minimum time, such lifts and elevators are required. So National Building Code has got provision for fire tower, which says it should be comprising of a fire lift, fire escape staircase, and both the things should be protected with 2 hours fire rated fire door. And this entire tower should be pressurized if building heights are more. Ultimately, a fireman who is responding to any fire emergency, he is also a human being. So he is not a Superman. So that one has to thought in the mind. So we have to building management or the owner or occupier or architect or developer, whosoever it may be, has to provide the minimum requirement of the building so that in case of emergency, the firefighters can reach easily on upper floor for carrying out firefighting and rescue operations. So that is the minimum requirement which is specified in the code, and it should be implemented for all high-rise buildings. So if you, after World Tower attack, NFPA also has agreed that the guided evacuation through lift is considered as one of the feature of the building, high-rise buildings, and they have allowed such type of evacuation in case of emergency where physically challenged people are there. For them the fireman will guide them in case of evacuation from the high-rise building. So that is accepted by NFPA like organization also, and in NBC also we have this provision since 1983. Only in 2016 with proper diagram it has been provided with, and now it has been implemented by Pan India various fire services as a safe approach to the high-rise buildings. So as far as high-rise buildings are concerned, whatever it may be hospitals, maybe business buildings or residential ones, such provision is required, but it has got a various other features also that I think Mr. Tak Matthew will be in a better position to address it. He is having rich experience about the subject matter, and he has got a means very rich experience, and he has done a lot of studies on this subject related to fire lifts also and general lifts also. So as far as a humble firefighter is concerned, we have to provide him the safe passageway to reach on upper floor for reaching in a minimum time, so that we call it as a golden time. When the fire is minimum, that time we should be in a position to attack it. So once it is spread on the 2-3 floors, then it is very difficult for the fire do the firefighting and rescue operations. So it is normal practice that we should get down below 2-3 floors where the fire incidence has occurred and create a base for firefighting and rescue operation, and from there we should attack on fire. So such type of SOPs are already there in international practices or the SOPs given by the builders or the firefighters. But unfortunately, some incidents, as recently in West Bengal, there was an incident where firefighters got into the lift and they succumbed due to smoke. So in Thane also in 2012, I think there was an incident when 8 firefighters lost their life in the lift itself. So such type of incident should not happen. The developers or the owner or occupier should provide all backup power DG or emergency lighting system for these areas, specifically fire tower, so that the firefighting operation becomes very easy and without any hindrances. So if we provide a proper fire tower as defined in National Building Code, definitely we will be in a position to save the precious human life and property, and it will be utilized by the local people also in case of normal operations. But in a given time when the fire is there, the pressurization will start and it will create a positive pressure in fire tower, so that no heat and smoke will enter into this fire tower, and it will be a safe passage for firefighters to reach on upper floor, and also to allow with the help of the firefighters, they can do the guided evacuation of the occupant with the help of this fire lift. So it is a very, I would say it is a boon for the high-rise building, and if properly maintained, definitely it will help to save the precious human life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Wonderful. So wonderful opening remarks that you have given to us, and there is a lot of text in your talk, and I'm sure you will remain with us to take few questions from the audience and along with Mr. Tak Matthew. So I request you to stay on. Maybe another hour and a half program. So I look forward to see you again, sir. I would like to introduce the Vittur to the audience here, who is the sponsor. May I request Mr. Arul Thangapan to take your 2-3 minutes of presenting Vittur capabilities here.
Thank you, Mr. Dominic. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to present about Vittur and Vittur Global Vitoor and Vitoor's products, what we are providing in India. Just want to start with what we are doing in global. We have around turnaround of 768 million euros and around 4,845 people work with Vitoor. 13 production sites are all over the globe, and in that India also we have a plant here, and 7 competency centers we have totally. Competency centers means the centers which are specialized in doors. uh, Italy is specialized for doors, cabins and systems are specialized in Turkey, and China is specialized on doors, and India is also specialized on systems and cabins. So these are the competency centers, and we cover almost 50 countries. The plus point is 600 patents are registered with Vitoor. Um, Vitoor is one of the company which invests huge on R&D, and each country has an R&D center which uh, tests product which are to local countries, which complies to local countries, and the product which are offered by Vitoor are in compliance to local codes, rules, and regulations. This is the plus point. The reason doors, okay, there's an anti-drop hook in the doors. When you push the door, also if the shoe is not there, also the door will not fall into the hoistway. This is the standard feature of the core door what we are offering. So these are the investments and the patent registered by Vitoor products. And some of the business partners, which I'm mentioning, all the big players of the globes. And other than that, we have a local players who also buy from us. So that those names are big names are there. So these are major names which I'm just showing it to you. And some of the reference projects on the globe, what we have done. And in India, there are 2 projects like Lodha Tower, which is having a speed of 8 meters per second, and Statue of Unity, which is having a 4 meter per second. These elevators are installed with Vitoor doors. And about Vitoor India, we supply doors, different types of doors in the market. The standard doors are called as core doors, which are fire rated doors, 2 hours fire rated doors, and there are circular doors. There are doors for Hydra doors, and there are doors for big usage. So which and special occasions like from ranging from a width of 700 to 1,400, and door range from 2,000 to 2,700 heights are being provided by Vitoor for any usage or any purpose. And we manufacture cabins, special design cabins for aesthetic look, to based on the building requirement. These are some of the cabins what I am displaying it to you, which can be used in cabins. We manufacture as a cabin, slings, safeties put together. We consolidate and give as a kit to suppliers so that they get a product which is tested and which is a proven product. Safety gears, which are the heart of the lift equipment, are manufactured and tested in India. They are from India. We do give safety gears with 1 meter per second up to 2.5 meters per second, which can be used and which is very compact. And normally the safety gears are manufactured with cast iron. Here it is a forged material which is used so that the design is compact and you don't have a failure at all. And maintenance is also easy in that range. And we have a overspeed governor and a tension weight. And we also have a home elevator kit, which is based on a German technology. It's 100% outsourced of a lift material product, which has been manufactured in India and which is given to supplied in India. And this is the product which complies 100% IS 15259. And it's a single phase product. It runs on a single phase. It requires a small pit of 300 mm and overhead of just 3000 mm only. And the controllers are located in the last floor. You have a manual rescue in the controller, and you have an electrical rescue in the controller. You have a through entrance. If you want a through entrance, front opening and rear opening, that is possible. It's a very compact design, but it's a very good in case of power failure, okay, it can run on an inverter also. 6 kV inverter, it can run. It's a home elevator kit. We don't maintain these things, but it can be used in villas and any residential purpose. So these are the different types of products which have been offered by Vitoor India. Vitoor India. That's all. Thank you. Thank you, Dak. Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you for the introduction of Vitoor to the audience here. I now, can you unshare the screen, Deepak? Deepak, can you unshare the screen? Yeah. I would like to introduce the well-known, the expert on vertical transportation, Mr. Tak Matthews. He is the principal consultant of Tak Consultancy and also the chairman of Vertical Transportation in Focus. Tak has over 30 years of experience in the elevator industry, a chartered engineer and the postgraduate in business administration. He is the convener of the Committee for Elevators and Escalators of the National Building Code of India. He is also a member on the Indian Standard Committee and Working Panel for Elevators and Escalators. Matthews is the founding trustee of the Elevator and Escalator Safety Trust, set up to impart knowledge, particularly to children to know how safely use the elevator and escalator. Very important knowledge that is imparting. I would now welcome the speaker of the day, Mr. Tak Matthews.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here, a pleasure to be talking on a subject which I first got introduced to in 2009. Unfortunately, it was a sad incident, what Mr. Santosh Varik referred to, 6 firemen who died in Thane. We were asked to investigate the incident by the Maharashtra Lift Inspectorate. And then we got into it and started discussing, and we realized that there was huge gaps in knowledge, understanding, and collaboration between the firemen, the fire departments, and the elevator industry. It's now 11 years since I've been talking about this. And it's also a little overwhelming for me, because when I started this journey of studying and trying to understand this, one of the persons with whom I had a lot of discussions, I don't know whether Mr. Santosh Varik remembers it, is with him. I had a lot of discussions with him. Of course, Mr. Deshmukh was also there. I would visit their office in Andheri MIDC, and we would keep discussing on all these different aspects. And of course, I was pointed in the right direction by him. In addition to that, we have also collaborated for the National Building Code 2016. And interestingly, amongst the elevator industry, the people on the standards committee, whenever there's a thing on fire, the person they all reach out to is Mr. Santosh Varik, because we believe his counsel makes a lot of sense. The other aspect is, again, when I'm studying about this, and you need to understand fire resistance, you need to understand this. And at that point of time, I did get a lot of input from Vitoor. So it's sort of a coming together of the people who did support me on this journey. So like I said, since 2009, I think 2010 is the first time I openly talked about these issues. And as it has been going on, I've been evolving, been talking about this at many forums. I think it's probably 3 to 4 dozen places where I have talked about the issues and the things that I've been on. So for those of you who have attended my sessions earlier, there will be some slides which look familiar, which look similar. Of course, it comes from all that time. And the reason why I keep repeating it is because some of the things that we have been talking about, some of the issues that we have been discussing, still haven't got addressed, still haven't got resolved. And one of the issues that I've always had is that when we have these sessions, we do not have too many architects on board. And today I'm really pleased to see the number of architects who are here. And something that I always maintain to make a building safe, it starts and ends with the architect. Without the architect's full involvement, there is nothing that can really be done to make the building safe. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of a humor, but it's a humor with a lot of meaning attached to it. So if you look at a tomato, knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is knowing that just because it's a fruit, you don't necessarily add it to fruit salad. I've used this before and people have heard it. Please, accept my apologies, but I will change the continuation a little bit. And on the other hand, nirvana is when you add fruit juice to your vodka without caring whether it's a fruit or a vegetable. Now, how does this apply to us? I just got this picture. I had a couple of other pictures also on. So knowledge is knowing that an emergency phone is not installed. You can see the picture there. Wisdom is putting up a notice. And then nirvana is continuing with that saying. It says, do not have an emergency at this location. Many aspects of fire and elevators, we seem to be going about it in this fashion. There is knowledge, there is wisdom, but when the knowledge and the wisdom come together, the impact or the outcome is something which is nirvana, which is probably counterproductive in everything we do. So, like I said, I got involved with fire and elevators in 2009, Tarangan, and ever since then, every 3 years, it's just sort of a coincidence that every 3 years, a sense of deja vu, we seem to have an incident. Mont Blanc was probably one little bit of an exception. And in each of these cases, the victims were either involved in firefighting or rescue. It is not as if they were going on a joyride in that particular elevator. The picture that you see on the extreme right is from Tarangan, Thane, where 6 firemen died. And sadly, on Diwali night, the news from below is from Crystal Tower, where 2 people died. And they had gone as brave men trying to rescue people. And they ended up dying. And Mr. Warik also referred to the railway building in Calcutta, where 9 people died in an elevator. And the question that I ask is, are we learning? And how will we learn? How will we move forward and ensure these kind of things do not happen? How do we do it? So the first thing, obvious thing is, it's not as if we need to reinvent the wheel. We have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge that has come up. Like, for instance, David McGrail, he comes from a 2nd generation firefighter. His father was a firefighter. I think his grandfather also was a firefighter. There's a lot of information that is available there. I believe it is a book which is a reference for the postgraduate diploma in safety and fire audit. And it's a book that I refer to often. We have the National Building Code, Volume 1 and Volume 2, 2016. 2005 was not bad. It was pretty good. But 2016 has got significantly higher elaboration. The fact that it is in 2 volumes itself speaks a lot. The point that I'm trying to say is we have the information, we have the knowledge. It is not as if we need some rocket science or we need to do some other external research to get into this. So as I go through this, my presentation today, I will not go verbatim with what is written in the National Building Code, but I'll try to clear some of the confusion that is there, or some of the fallacies which exist. So the first clarification that is required is, we always keep referring it to as fire lift. And I realized that it is a big mistake after the incident which took place at Primrose Apartments, that is pretty close to where I live, where 5 men died. And the expectation from the user, the expectation from everybody is that it's a fire lift, and therefore it has to withstand fire. So I've been very cautious about it ever since, that the fire lift is a short form for a fireman's lift or a firefighter's lift. I think we should stop calling it a fire lift and give it a mistaken understanding. Fireman's lift is not, it can be fire resistant, but it cannot be fireproof. We need to recognize this and understand it. It is not something that can go through fire. This is the first clarification that is required. The second clarification that is required is, it again comes up in a lot of NOC documents, that car doors cannot be made fire resistant by virtue of its construction. In any case, it is superfluous because the elevator is moving up and down, or the elevator is parked on the ground floor with the doors open. So it's obviously something which is superfluous. Yet we see this coming up again and again in CFO documents and CFO requirements for around the country, and technically this is something which is impossible. Of course, like I mentioned, cars and hoistway equipment can be of fire retardant material, but it just cannot be made fire resistant. So if you think that It'll be fireproof. Sorry, it should be fireproof. We need to recognize that it is not possible. So 2 clarifications to start off with. So the first challenge we come to elevators and fire is that the adequacy of elevators. So there are norms that have been set in the National Building Code of 2016. It was there in 2005. Again, in 2016, we have elaborated more. I'll not talk about the office buildings. I'll skip the residential buildings. Hotels, for instance, it talks about a handling capacity of 10% to 15%. That means in a 5-minute period, the elevator system that you have should be able to handle 10 to 15% of the people. The same applies for hospitals. And when you talk about hospitals, the sizing has to also consider standard stretcher lifts or hospital beds, which can take a hospital bed with the dollies attached to it, with the attendant to it. We need to recognize that. And we also need to consider that in an eventuality of evacuation, how many patients would need to be evacuated on stretchers? What is your evacuation plan? What is the time frame in which you think that you would have to evacuate the people on the stretchers? Some of the thumb rules that I've been asking, some of the discussions that I've had with doctors is that on an average, if you have 100 beds, you need to consider that 50 people might need to be removed on a stretcher. Now, we need to remember that when we are taking a stretcher in an elevator, it's only one stretcher that can be accommodated. So you would need to understand this particular aspect. NBC 2016 also requires a stretcher lift for buildings about 30 meters, something which many of us ignore. Many of the buildings that are coming up ignore this particular requirement. So this is what NBC says. But the sad aspect is that most of the buildings in India are grossly inadequate when it comes to the requirement of elevators. Most buildings are designed without a design basis report or a traffic analysis for elevators. In fact, I am yet to see a hospital which has come with a traffic analysis report that is attached to it. So to start off with, the basic elevators are inadequate. So in that kind of a situation, to think that we would have a more focus on elevators for firefighting and for evacuation probably seems to be a little bit of a mistaken position. Okay, another thing that we need to recognize is that elevators and human beings react very differently in the fire condition. Human beings, of course, any fire consultant or any fire authority would say that, okay, human beings, we need to protect them from smoke, fire, and water. But for an elevator, the most critical aspect is water. Water will kill an elevator. Just one drop can kill an elevator, prevent it from operating, or even worse, it could short circuit it and have the elevator running in a different way than what it should be. Now, this particular aspect needs to be recognized because the rest of the building design and most aspects of how we attack the fire and the elevator aspect is based on the understanding that what is good for humans is good for elevators. We'll just sort of go through it as we go along. So, like I said, if the water is the most critical thing, the lift has to be protected against water, fire, and smoke. NBC 2016 and IS 45 requires the lift to be protected enclosed within a 2-hour fire resistant wall. There is a query that has come up. I think that will probably address it. That can it be enclosed in a steel structure or whatever it is, the enclosure has to be 2-hour fire resistant. And the lift has to be protected with landing doors with a fire resistance of a minimum 60 minutes. I will not get into this area, which is not exactly my expertise. And I mean, Vitur would be taking us on this particular aspect. So this is NBC 2016, which talks about a fire, which Mr. Santosh Warik referred to. It talks about a situation where you have a lift, which is in a protected lobby. You have a staircase, a fire exit staircase, which is attached to it. Just before our session, we had a discussion about the wet riser, which is in the hose reel with Mr. Santosh Warik. Interestingly, this particular aspect was pointed out to me by Dr. Rangale, who said that this picture is probably incorrect, and we need to flip the location of the stair and the lift, which I think probably sort of makes sense, where the fire riser and the hose reel is along with the stairwell, so that it can be accessed through the fire door and not that it have to go through a different location. This is probably something which I mean, Mr. Santosh Warik and me would need to get into a discussion along with the rest of us subsequently. In fact, this discussion on this with Dr. Rangale was, I think, probably the last session that I physically talked about last year. However, though we need a protected, we are talking about the India, and the overbearing emphasis continues to be on hoistway pressurization. This slide has not changed in the last 10 years. And I go from design meeting to design meeting where we emphasize so much on hoistway pressurization. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but then when I look at it from an elevator perspective, the question that I ask is, these people who died, would they have been saved by a pressurization of the hoistway? Interestingly, I was at a session again, Dr. Rangdale, where he was talking about a fire which took place at the Indian Express building, where after 2 hours, they found people in the elevator. And they were all intact, except for the fact that they were stuck there. They were all intact just because of the fact that the fire-resistant doors operated the way they should have. There was no smoke that penetrated into the hoistway. So this is a question that needs to be addressed, and we need to get our priorities right. We need to understand that, okay, fine, just because we cannot do a protected lobby, pressurizing it does not take care of the issue. The issue remains exactly the same. The only reference to hoistway pressurization in NBC is part 4, is where it talks about a situation where in case you cannot provide a lobby, then you need to be pressurizing the hoistway, which means if you have the elevators opening up into a common area, then you would need to consider pressurizing the hoistway, which to me does make sense, but it's in the kind of a scenario, this obviously is not going to be a fireman's lift, because if it's opening up into a common area, there is no protection, and it is definitely not an elevator that the firemen should use for any of their operations. So we need to remember, again, I'm repeating this, I'm stressing this, that the only reference to pressurization of a hoistway, lift hoistway, is in a situation where a lobby cannot be provided. If you look at most of the buildings around the country, rarely do you have a situation where you do not have a lobby. So that sort of takes away the reason why we insist on hoistway pressurization. Coming to, again, in terms of the protected lobby, justifications of protected lobby, this, like I said, is David McGrail's book, which I believe is a great resource for not just the firemen. I believe it's a great resource for elevator companies, elevator people who are involved in the design to understand how things should operate. It's a great resource for architects, a great resource for developers. So if you look at it, it says never take an elevator directly to the reported fire flow. I think is common sense, but then in a panic situation, common sense is probably something that goes off. I mean, there are also other technical reasons why an elevator could probably lose its own control and could land up on the fire floor. It says stop 2 floors below the reported fire floor, and then you access it through the stairs. So if you look at the picture at the left, of course, it stopped 1 floor before the fire floor. Let's ignore that particular thing. Let us assume it is 2 floors below. So they come up using the firefighter's lift. They take the stairs, and then they go to the particular floor where the fire is, and then they fight the fire from there. If you look at many of the buildings where we have provided the staircase and the firefighters' lifts are nowhere near each other. And the question that comes up is, we expect the firemen to use the elevator to 2 floors below the affected floor, and then they are supposed to find the staircase. Now, the staircase is somewhere else and the firefighter's lift is somewhere else. How does it work? So again, the justification as to why the protected lobby has to be there, I think has to be essential. And I think as architects, as developers, as elevator people, we need to recognize that the firemen are on a risky assignment. And if we do not provide an environment which is safe for them, they are in trouble. From the word go, they are in trouble. So now coming to what the National Building Code says, I will not go clause by clause. We have defined and said that the requirements, there's a fire lift required for buildings above 15 meters. There is a phase 1 operation where all elevators are expected. I say all elevators are expected to return to the evacuation floor, either by toggling of the fireman's switch or through a BMS input. There's a question that keeps happening. What do we do about the power? The person who is responsible for switching off the power has to verify that all the elevators are parked before they switch off the power supply. We have had a couple of incidents where I see that the moment there's a fire, there's a very enthusiastic person, enthusiastic resident and occupant who goes switches off the power, and suddenly we find people who are stuck on different floors. Even worse, you could have a situation where an elevator with an automatic rescue device, when the power goes off, goes and rescues the person onto the evacuation floor. So, there has to be an SOP that has to be very clearly understood. I have a friend of mine who is a New Zealander, Indian by origin, but a New Zealander. So he was talking about a building where there was a fire drill, and it was morning, and only two people who were there from the residents who went down was him and his wife. Nobody else landed up. So fire drills and things like that have something that have to be followed so that we understand what requires to be done. Of course, phase 2 is for the fireman's elevators to be available for the use by the firemen with the car movement only from within the car. So I'm not going to get into the detail of this. This is probably something that could take about an hour to explain how the entire operation works. One new aspect that has been clarified in the National Building Code is the possibility of zoning of elevators. This is particularly because the buildings are getting taller. So if you were to look at these green buildings over here, so you have a fire on a lower floor. And if you have elevator zone where you have these high-rise elevators not serving this lower zone, the firemen have an opportunity of attacking the fire from above because there's no opening here. Or they have an opportunity of evacuating the rest of the building because the fire is there. But suppose the elevators are serving all the floors, we have a specific issue because that means everything is compromised. So we need to slowly move away from that compulsory requirement that the fireman's lift has to serve all floors. On the other hand, the clause has to be that there should be at least one fireman's lift or more serving every floor. It doesn't necessarily need that single fire lift has to be serving every particular floor. This is something that we have provided for in the National Building Code. Again, something that needs to be incorporated and understood as we go along. A point which I stress over here is, suppose we have all those car parking floors. I mean, 8 floors of car parking, and we have the main tower going up through it. In my opinion, the main elevator should not be stopping at the car parking floors because the risk is significantly higher. But then if you insist on it being opening, then you have to give a protected lobby, but the risks are still pretty high. We have also expanded as to what happens above 60 meters. We have from the 8-passenger minimum required, we have said that it has to be a larger capacity lift for at least 1,000 kilos, that is 15 passengers. The reason for this is, again, if you were to understand how a fireman is supposed to operate a fireman's lift, you will know that there should be a minimum of, I think it is 5 people, where you have one person who drives the elevator, and then you have 4 different activities. In an 8-passenger lift, the 5 men with their gear, they will not fit in. So we recognize that as the building grows taller, that the elevator has to become part of your firefighting strategy. And we have sort of put it and said that it's a minimum of 1,000 kilos. We have talking about CCTVs and lift lobbies so that the firemen have a good idea as to whether the protected lobby is still intact, which is still secure. We expect displays at the fire command center, a BMS room, but does it happen? A higher IP protection against splashing and water for the equipment. I mean, respective how high the IP protection, elevators cannot be made waterproof. The key aspect is that it has to be a fire command center and a building management system. The whole building has to have a very clear firefighting and evacuation thing put in place. Like I said, the logic is that the firemen will necessarily have to use the lifts for the building, for firefighting as the building grows taller. Okay, so now let's come into the evacuation elevator, something that has come which is being talked about a lot now. Excuse me. So the traditional thing has been that do not use the lift in case of a fire, use only the stairs. In many ways, this is fact, but if you look at the incidents which we talked about, people dying, this would really hold true. However, in the 9/11 incident in the US, more than 3,000 people escaped because they evacuated the tower using the elevators, ignoring that particular rule. And that is how this occupant evacuation operation concept got into place. In any case, for a tall building, an occupant evacuation elevator is a must with occupants with special needs. Somebody who is on a wheelchair, somebody who's got a back problem, who cannot climb down all those stairs. An elevator is a must. So does that mean that we can start using any elevator? The answer is no, because you have issues involved. And that's where I'm going to start clarifying it. However, before I get into that, I think it's essential that we clarify what a fireman's lift is and what an occupant evacuation lift is. And I think there seems to be a lot of confusion in terms of what is what. So a firefighting lift or a fireman's lift is for firemen, for firefighting and evacuation. That means the firemen have control over the firefighting and they have control over the evacuation. The general understanding is that they are experts and they have the standard operating process for using a fireman's elevator. In contrast, the emergency evacuation, it's an occupant emergency evacuation lift, is for occupants to self-evacuate within the golden period. I think it's 30 minutes is considered the golden period, that you know there's an incident and there's an emergency, you're supposed to evacuate, and that's a golden period. And it's for laymen, which means that they do not know what to check for, or they do not know what to do. They will virtually need to be told what needs to be done. And as far as is practically possible, we need to make it even that much more safer. So the two different thing is that in an emergency situation, a fireman will know what the precautions are. In an occupant will not know what the precautions are. So accordingly, the requirements change. So you have to have fire assistant landing doors required for both the situations. The firefighting elevator should be enclosed in a protected lobby. I'm saying should be because I know it is not happening. And I mean, something that I've been saying for the last 10 years, my plea to firemen is, if in the building, the elevator is not in a protected lobby, for heaven's sake, please do not use the fireman's lift. Irrespective of what people may say, please do not use it. The emergency evacuation lift definitely has to be in a protected lobby because we have potential issues. Other requirements that have to be there, the firefighting is controlled according to fireman's service. Phase 1, the phase 2 operation, which I talked about. The control is only from within the car. The emergency evacuation, on the other hand, is almost automatic operation. There is control from outside the elevator but then it is more or less automatic. You have to have CCTVs monitoring what is going on. You have to have a PA system, which means all these things have to be controlled from a fire control center. It is not something that is automatically happening. There has to be somebody who manages this entire thing. It just doesn't go on its own. So we talked about a fireman's lift. We talked about evacuation, occupant evacuation lift. But in the recent times, there's something that has been thrown up and it is creating a lot of confusion. And I've seen contraptions that are being thrown out as a fireman's evacuation lift. And I asked this question, what is a fireman's evacuation lift? How and why is it different from a fireman's lift? If we have a fireman's lift, which is in a protected lobby, why on earth can it not be also the evacuation lift, which is under the fireman's control? Why do we need to create contraptions, which, I mean, I've studied some of the contraptions, we will address it as we go along, which in my opinion are positively dangerous, can actually put the fireman and the person who's being evacuated in serious danger. So talking about the occupant evacuation lift, they started from 9/11. The International Building Code 2015-2018 says, where installed in accordance with Section 3008, passenger elevators for public use shall be permitted to be used for occupant self-evacuation. Again, note, the point here is self-evacuation. It is also expanded in clause 2.27.11 of the American Standard for Mechanical Engineers, Society of Mechanical Engineers A17.1, which is the American standards for elevators. I mean, having said this, there are technical issues that do still exist. In fact, I've been in a number of discussions and conferences on this subject. And, when we start asking questions, there's a lot of yes, but we do not know, we're still working on it. One of the things that I keep asking is, what if the elevator is overloaded and people refuse to get out of the elevator? What happens? So there are issues. So it's still not fully resolved, but it is something which is very clearly required for a tall building. Europe has EN 8176, evacuation of disabled persons using lifts. Then we have ISO standard, which is requirements for lifts used to assist in building evacuation. Again, note what I'm saying again, this is the occupant evacuation elevator. So what does the National Building Code of 2016 says? Clause 7.2, Part 8, Section 5A of NBC 2016 clearly indicates what an occupant evacuation elevator has to be like. It very clearly defines and says what all needs to be used, what all should be available. It's not saying that it should be over and above a fireman's lift. It says that it can be the fireman's lift, but whatever it is, it has to be provided with their minimum requirements. Of course, like I said, the logic is that if somebody is disabled, somebody is elderly, they might need assistance to evacuate from the building. They might not be able to use the staircase. So what are some of the key requirements? There have to be instances of detecting fire, smoke, and temperature within the hoistway, within the lobbies. The location of events has to be very clear in relation to the lifts. Remember, these are laymen. So they need the person who is controlling it, who's managing this entire thing, needs to be aware of what is happening everywhere. The emergency power provisions have to be, again, very well controlled and very well in place. Remember, again, these are laymen who are involved. So, decisions and calls cannot be just taken by somebody who is doing this. So these things have to be very well taken care of. There are decisions that have to be taken. That's why I said there has to be somebody managing it. What's the time of evacuation? Is the decision yes or no? Is it a scenario where the elevators can be used? Can the elevators not be used? But the decisions have to be taken and they have to be communicated. Number and size of lifts is crucial. Like, for instance, the Burj Khalifa, they are expecting a significant part of the population to be evacuated using the lifts, which obviously means that they are in fire-protected lobbies with all, they actually call it the lifeboats, with all these arrangements. And incidentally, the Burj Khalifa hoistways are not pressurized. The equipment, lift equipment is protected. You need to, have a very clear way of suspending or removing an elevator from evacuation service if it has been compromised. Constant surveillance of the hoistway, constant surveillance of the lobbies, communication. All these things are things that are required for an evacuation lift. However, we have all these good documents and papers. I'll just take a few more minutes. However, the big issue and the big challenge which I see across the board is the actual people who finally have to implement the National Building Code, people who have to do it at the local thing, have necessarily do not agree with what is in the National Building Code. There are interpretations which vary between authorities. In fact, I have sat with the same document with two different people, and I've got two different interpretations. There are requirements that are being laid out way beyond the National Building Code. Some of them, like I indicated already, are impractical, or it's just not affordable. Like, for instance, there was a requirement that there should be glass doors. Now, glass doors would probably increase the cost of an elevator by about 4 to 5 times if they needed to be fire rated. Some of the requirements are with dangerous consequences. I have elaborated this in past thing. The next thing is that there is no synergy in the final outcome. And again, a question that I've had for the last over a decade. Does the behavior of fire differ between locations? Does it differ between Maharashtra and West Bengal? Does it differ between West Bengal and Tamil Nadu? If the answer is that it does not differ, why is it that we end up with a situation where we have requirements which vary from place to place? And I believe that this is something that has to be addressed and has to be set in place. Or we accept the fact that, okay, fire differs from place to place, and okay, it doesn't matter, everybody needs to write their own rules. And if they have to write their own rules, what's going to happen is, I would suspect that no rule is really going to get implemented, because no product is going to be specifically made for a specific location. So some examples of mismatch between codes. So this is an NOC document. So part of the document refers to 2016, and part of it's the same document. I've just sort of put it together. Part of it refers to NBC 2005. Obviously, it's a mismatch. Last vision for both doors, which I think Prashant from Deepak from Vittur will clarify this a little bit more. It says car doors shall have at least 2-hour fire. Car doors cannot be made fire resistant. And if the moment you have a vision panel, the fire resistance of the landing door is compromised. And not just that, if you look at the IAS 14665, it very clearly says vision panel shall not be provided on power operated doors. If you have an NOC which says this is violating the basic standard of your elevator. Fire evacuation car doors, it should be 2-hour fire resistant. Car doors cannot be fire. I can't say this enough. We had a mention in NBC 2005 where we said 30 minutes for car door fire resistance, which was an error. And Mr. Derry, the convener of Part 4, had said it was an error and it was accepted, but then we still see it coming up in NOC documents. There's a thing which says that the evacuation lift, fire evacuation lift, shall be provided at the mid-landing. The National Building Code, Part 4, this is not elevators, says lift shall not open in a staircase. It obviously has reasons why. If you have a lift opening into a staircase and there are people who are trying to run out of the building, you could end up with a potential issue. And Then there is another requirement which says that the elevator has to be located on the ground floor. The elevator machine, lift machine room has to be on the ground floor. This is an option which is only practical for short buildings and slow elevators. If you're talking about a tall building where this really becomes a requirement, you suddenly find that this doesn't work. But this is something that comes in NOC documents, and unfortunately, there are people from the elevator industry who claim to have given a solution, but when we get into the details of it, we find that those solutions rarely work. So some of the products that supposedly meet the requirements, and these are documents that have been submitted to my clients, and I look at it, and I mean, I really scratch my head because my understanding goes haywire. So for instance, this is a test certificate for a fire door that has been submitted to a client of mine. Now, I do not see how these even look like elevator doors. Now, I have seen fire tests of elevator doors being done, and I do not think, I'm not an expert, but I do not think that this looks anything like a fire resistance test for an elevator door. First, this does not look like an elevator door. Second, I do not think that this is a fire resistant test as can be used, and we can confidently say, okay, this door is fire resistant and can be used for firefighting purposes. Another certificate which was issued, this is supposed to be a European certificate which was issued, and when I looked at each of these clauses, there's nothing that refers to an elevator as such. It's talking about machinery, it is talking about suspension means, it's talking about an American standard. Obviously, Europe would not be working on an American standard. There is no reference to EN 81, 20, or 50, or 72 based on basis of which Europe operates. So you have these kind of contraptions which are certified and things, but the certification and the application necessarily do not apply to what, I mean, it does not meet the requirements that we have. And that's where I have the plea. Let us stick to the National Building Code. Let us stick to what we have. And in case there is something which is grossly wrong with it, let's go back to the National Building Code. Let us have a collaboration between architects, firemen, with the elevator industry, and let's set it right rather than pick and choose and get into a situation where we have the knowledge, we have the wisdom, but finally we end up with nirvana. To sort of conclude, elevators have to be part of any emergency mitigation strategy. I don't think that I can, in any way, I can stress this in any way. It has to be part of the mitigation strategy. It has to be part of the evacuation strategy. However, for this to happen, the building has to be designed accordingly and to a uniform code. My advice to firemen, again, I would say that if the elevator is not in a protected lobby, for heaven's sake, please do not use the elevator. With that, I stop. Like I would say that fire and life safety is about all of us. If you do not collaborate together, it's not going to be safe. Thank you very much, Dominic.
Thank you, sir. Wonderful statement you made at the end. If you do not collaborate, we do not achieve the goal. What a statement it is. That is why FOCUS stands for. Bring in all stakeholders, whether hotels or hospitals or the residential. We all need to come together, understand the challenges that we have in various. It could be a standard issue, it could be a best practices issue, it could be a product issue. Unless you don't come together, we cannot address the issues. And wonderful presentation. I know you try to do justice to the subject. What is fireman lift and what is occupant evacuation lift? Why it should not be called as a fireman evacuation lift? So there is so much of confusion. I know there are a lot of builders in this group, a lot of hospitals participants are here. Elevator is such an important integral part of the building, and we get confused in many times. And in today's webinar, you tried your best to clarify. I could see the questions pouring. I'm sure we have a wonderful moderator. The president of FOCUS will take up each questions. I think the question answer will be another eye opener. I'm sure we'll get more and more clarity during our question answer. So moving forward, we have another speaker, Mr. Deepak Prashant from Vitor. He's going to talk about how important the fire door, whether elevator door need to be fire resistance. He's going to talk about generic. He's going to talk about the standard that we follow nationally and internationally. Mr. Deepak Prashant, who joined as a R&D manager in 2016, has grown in very short 5 years. He's become the head of the R&D center of Vitor. Young and energetic speaker, Deepak Prashant, to you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Dominic. Let me share my screen.
Oh, sorry. Earlier it was Harul Prakash with a beard. So I think the name there, it was showing Deepak Prashant. So I was wondering your image is different. So the earlier who presented about was Harul Prakash. I'm sorry, my apologies. And here is Deepak Prashant, the young man. Okay, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Dominic, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present about a very interesting topic about fire resistance of elevator landing doors. So as we have seen so far, Mr. Varick has explained about the importance of firefighters and during rescue operation. And also we have seen Mr. Tak Mathis, who has explained in a detailed manner what are the misconceptions in for the elevator industry when compared to the standards, and the misinterpretation of the people who think about the fireman and fire lift and all those things. So my topic, I'll be mostly covering about the elevator landing doors and their fire resistance. So in the event there is a fire in building, let's say in the ground floor, if there is a fire, and the left side you can see it is an elevator shaft, and if there is no fire rated landing doors, the fire quickly spreads from one floor to the other floor very quickly in a matter of few minutes, because this acts as a chimney effect. Because as everyone knows that when there is a fire event, the hot gases and the smoke easily spreads to other floors through the elevator shaft, because it is a hollow section in the building. So this is the reason why elevator landing doors with fire resistance is very important, because this acts as a line of defense for the firefighters to come and rescue people. So in as per Indian elevator standards says that beyond 15-meter height of buildings should have landing doors fire rated at least for the minimum of 1 hour. And each region has a different fire elevator standard, which I'll be covering in the subsequent slides. Actually, the fire elevator landing doors actually prevents fire from spreading to other floors, and also this fire rated doors should be capable of withstanding a very high temperature. To give you an example, it can reach up to more than 1000 degrees Celsius, depending on the rating of the doors. It can be 60 minutes or 90 minutes or 120 minutes. Based on that, it changes. And this, as I said earlier, this acts as a line of defense, because if it is not fire rated, then before the firefighters arrives, it can lead to an unfortunate catastrophe. So still in India, majority of the buildings still they use manual doors, and this is not fire rated, and it does not offer any fire resistance. And also subsequently, there are some companies who says that they offer metallic doors and they consider it as fire rated, but it is actually totally different. Let me say by a simple way saying that all metallic doors or automatic doors is not automatically qualified as fire resistant, because the cross section, the design, the choice of materials, and before releasing it into the market, it has to undergo an actual live fire test. And only after the fire test is passed in a certified laboratory, then they provide a certification that this product, meaning this fire rated landing door, complies to certain standard for a classification with the duration mentioned. So like I said, globally, if you see in different regions, there are different fire elevator standards. And especially for landing doors in Europe, it is called as EN 8158. And for India, it is IS 3809 or 3614. And for UK, it is BS 476. And for US, it is UL 10B. And for China, it is GVT 9978. So these are the different fire standards across worldwide used right as of today. And why there are a lot of different standards is because historical reasons. Each country had a different fire requirements, and in the future, hope there'll be a harmonization, which is a technical committee working on it, and that will eventually lead to a worldwide standard for lift landing doors. And when it comes to landing doors fire rating, there is a three different classification. One is related to E. It means that the integrity of the landing door. And another one is EI, which is actually insulated door. And EW, it is semi-insulated doors. And the duration starts from 60, 90, or 120. It purely depends upon the builder's requirement and the country's norms requirement. For example, in Europe, EN 8158, minimum fire rating duration is 60 minutes. When it comes to Indian standard, it is IS 3809. The minimum fire rating duration is 60 minutes. And it depends on different standards. So the key parameters checked during a fire test is actually the lift landing door is actually fixed to a concrete or a concrete wall or something, and that is in turn subjected to a furnace of a fire test. And here the key measurements are sustained flaming on components and gap gauge measurement, radiation measurement, gas leakage rate, and fire force stream. All these are key parameters tested during the fire test, but I should say that these are not mandatory parameters checked for all the standards. Each standard has a different parameters, but I've consolidated that these are the key parameters across the worldwide according to the applicable standard. These are the things checked. When I say sustained flaming on components, it is not just the elevator landing door, it is also the sub-components of the mechanism, the frame or the sill. Each component is subjected to the fire test. It is not just the landing doors which is moving, and the frames, mechanism, everything, static and dynamic components will be monitored. And the gap gauge is actually a gauge which is tested between the doors or the frames, whether in the event of the fire test, is there any gap which is getting opened up. And in some cases, like insulated doors, the radiation levels also is checked. And the gas leakage rate, for example, EN 8158, the gas leakage rate is also checked. And if it crosses a prescribed limit, then it is considered as a pass or fail. And fire hose stream is specifically applicable only for the American standard UL 10B, which all these parameters I'll explain in the subsequent slides. So sustained flaming on components. So here, this is applicable for all the classifications, whether it is integrity or insulation or semi-insulation. This integrity is actually defining the complete elevator door system or the landing door system, whether the integrity it is withstanding or not. Predominantly, what happens is when the doors are subject to the fire test, initially it can withstand, but as the temperature increases and the pressure difference happens, some components can catch fire. There may be a leakage because of a gap between doors and panels, or doors and frames. And if the hot gases starts leaking, this also in turn can have an effect on the mechanism, where the rollers or switches or any other critical components can also catch fire. And the integrity loss is considered when the sustained flaming happens for more than 10 seconds. And if it happens during any duration of the fire test, it is considered a test as failed. And this is actually documented by both the testing party and also the certified laboratory, which their equipments are monitored from start to end of the fire test. And for this case, the gap gauge, this is specifically applicable only for the BS 476. And this, you can see at the bottom, there is a gap gauge measurement of two different specifications. One is 6 mm, another one is 25 mm. This I can explain you. I have a short sample video of the live fire test, which we did earlier in Vittur. And this happens when the integrity of the door system still exists, but because of the high temperature of the doors, or maybe because of the choice of materials, or because of the door panel construction or the design elements, it can happen. So I have a short 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes video where you can see an actual live fire test performed. So here you can see an actual landing door is fixed to the wall, construction wall, and towards the other side, there is a movement of furnace, which is actually closing the gap between the door and the furnace. So essentially, the right side of the door is considered as the lift lobby, and the left side of the section is considered as the hoistway section, where the lift moves. So once the furnace starts closing and the gaps are closed, this is where the timing starts for the fire test. And here, the complete landing door mechanism, landing door system is subjected to the fire test. Readings are noted, periodical readings are taken, and the values are noted not by manually, but it is also system controlled. And this actually varies depending on the time frame. Like I said, here you can see after 15 minutes fire test, you can see there is a lot of black color smoke, but there is no sustained flaming. And you can see the door panels have been deformed, but it has not lost the structural integrity, meaning the door panels are still secured. There is no gaps on the door panels. So as the temperature inside the furnace keeps rising for the specified amount of duration, the door panel starts reacting. So you can see that the door panel actually, even after deformation, but there is no gaps. In between a person actually uses the gap gauge, which I mentioned earlier. It is a 6 mm rod. This is passed along the door panels to check whether the gap has been created or not. So if the rod doesn't passes between the gaps of the panels, it is considered as passed. And as the temperature increases, you can see how the landing door reacts with the fire. Here you can see this is actually a fire test where it has crossed 45 minutes. So half of the section of the door is actually blood hot red, and bottom portion, since the hot pressure gases are moving upwards, you can see it because of the pressure difference. The majority of the doors, the top section is subjected to a very high temperature. And this gap gauge measurement is not done just at the beginning and at the end of the fire test. It is done periodically whenever they see a deformation. And here you can see this has crossed 60 minutes of fire test, and you can see almost the complete door is showing a change of characteristics. So this test was subjected to 60 minutes, but normally in fire test, more than the let's say if it is we are testing the doors for 60 minutes, the test is not stopped at 60 minutes. It is actually tested beyond 60 minutes just to keep it as a buffer, and also to see how the door system reacts beyond this fire rated specifications. So here you can see after 60 minutes, there is a gap between two panels. So at this point of time, it is considered as a test stop. And this is the gap which I was mentioning, that the gap gauge is used to measure whether the fire test is passed or failed for this BS 476 Part 22 fire test. And for this actual fire test, it has, though it is rated as 60 minutes, but the actual fire test was stopped at 84 minutes. And we can see the next classification is related to radiation. Here, the main measurement is actually though there is no smoke or there is no gap passing from the lobby to the hoistway, passing through the landing doors, but radiation for certain applications like insulated doors or semi-insulated doors, depending on the building application. Here, the radiation levels also are measured, and each standard has a different criteria defined as per this, their regional requirements specified in the standards, the radiation requirements. And when it comes to EN 8158, there is also one more parameter which is checked, which is called as the gas leakage rate. Here, the hot gases passing in between the doors or inside the furnace itself is actually measured. Whereas in BS 476, this is not measured, but EN 8158, this is measured. And in EN 8858, the gaps are not measured, but the hot gases are actually measured. And it is actually related to it is actually related to the panel width of the door and other parameters. So the limit for EN 8158 is it should not exceed 3 meter cube per minute per meter, the gas leakage rate. And when it comes to UL10B, this is another stringent fire test. Apart from the fire test, the completion, the door, the ability of the door is door assembly is evaluated using a predetermined test exposure. And once the fire test is completed, there is a live fire hose stream test, which is actually the water is sprayed onto the doors after the fire test to check whether the door system is still has not lost the structural integrity. And this is actually one of the stringent tests, because normally for EN 8158 the gases are measured but the gaps are not measured. When it comes to BS 476, gaps are very important and it's measured across the fire test, and but there's the gases are not measured. But when it comes to UL10B, apart from this, when you can actually imagine when a landing door, let's say it has reached around 1000 degrees Celsius, and after the test has been stopped, the panel actually deforms back. It tries to come back to the original position, because it is obviously because of the change in temperature of the metal structure. So when a high temperature doors are subjected to a cold water test, you can imagine how the doors is how the doors is performed. And so now, just to give a little bit of perspective, in Indian elevator standards, fire rating landing doors are mandatory for buildings beyond 15 meters height. When it comes to manual doors, it can be never fire rated. So in the event, the people still claim that some manual doors with metal closed enclosures, they say that it is still fire rated. It is not actually, and technically it is not possible. and hence certified automatic doors with actual fire certifications done with accredited laboratories is only considered as fire rating. So if someone says that I have a landing door which is metal fire rated, please insist on fire certification, because fire certification is not given by the manufacturer. It is actually given by the certified laboratories. It can be their accreditation can be checked by anyone, and in this fire certification, there is specification of the door design, their materials used, their cross section, their dimensions, and also the application, the classification, the duration, everything is mentioned. And in India, we have seen there are some places where in an automatic landing door with construction made from metal, there are some places, or I can say predominantly in some parts of the Indian states, they use vision doors. Vision doors is good for people who are trapped in elevators to see, physically see whether the people are trapped or not. But this actually creates a problem for fire rating. If there is a landing door fire rated and they try to convert it on their own to a vision panel with a normal glass, automatically this does not qualify as a fire rating, because for fire rated glass doors or vision doors, the glass has to be also fire certified. So in fire rated glass, there is a different specification for glass material, and some cases the glass is actually dual layer. In certain cases, like when it's subjected to fire test, the first front face of the glass actually melts and falls below, but the secondary glass actually holds the complete door system, and thereby preventing all the key parameters of the fire test which I mentioned earlier.
Deepak, how many slides you
And
have?
another one.
Okay.
So I'll just quickly rush through. So fire-rated glass doors are obviously expensive because it is not mandatory, or people are still not educated why the glass doors also form an integral part of the building. Like I said, landing doors also form a line of defense in the event of fire. That's it from my side, Mr. Dominic. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak. Wonderful insight on importance of fire-resistant elevator door. So I'm sure participant will have a few questions to you, and I would. Can you unshare the screen, please? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the moderator for the Q&A, none other than our great Suresh Vasudevan, the president of Focus and also the chairman of Indian Green Building Council. He's also the vice chairman of National Building Code. With over 56 years of professional experience in the housing, infrastructure, rural and urban development and built environment sectors, has worked in Tamil Nadu Public Department for 1.5 years, later in BIS for 12.5 years, and was directly associated with the formulation of leading national standard and codes, National Building Code, and is now the vice chairman of NBC. He has so much of energy. He is not only driving Focus, he is leading many other society in India. And Focus, I believe, is passionate because all the critical services is getting integrated. I'm sure under his leadership, we will see the Indian society going global. Over to our president, Mr. V. Suresh.
Thank you, Dominic. Very happy good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'm a little listening that some of the people are going out because the Q&A session starting, because we are out of the time period now. Let me try to squeeze in about 25 questions are there. Let me see how best I can push it across in the shortest possible time. And I would like all the all our distinguished panelists to be available there. I find TAC is already there. I'm sure Warik Saab is there. Warik Saab, are you still there?
Yeah, I am there.
Wonderful, wonderful, sir. Wonderful. And of course, Deepak is there. So let me shoot the question. Let me go like a rapid fire way. First question is for Yogendra Srivastava. He has got two questions coming. What type of metal framework can be done, or what materials can be used for the main and cladding? That's question number one. A related question is, what is the capacity of the lift based on? Is it based on number of persons on a typical floor or built-up area? I think, Tak, you can take this, number one.
Yeah, first thing, the structure has to be, the elevator has to be enclosed in a 2-hour fire structure.
Yeah.
Number two, elevator sizing has to be a function of traffic analysis. So the fireman's lift, we do talk about a minimum of 15 passenger, but the outcome has to be of traffic analysis and what the building requires.
Yeah.
But the minimum is 15 passenger.
Thank you so much. That takes question number 3. Santesh Gandhi is the one who has raised this question. In high-rise building, generally architects provide shaft pressurizing duct opening in between floors instead of top overhead area. In such case, how far safe and how to give fire lift in running operation when heavy airflow is blowing inside shaft? When lift shaft is pressurized, is it mandatory to provide smoke vent cutouts? So I think you partly answered it, Tak, but I would like you to give a formal reply to the question.
A smoke vent is required because in the eventuality of a fire inside the hoistway, that's the only way the smoke will be vented out or it will get into the building. Two, the point that I'm saying is pressurization does not solve the process and in many ways is superfluous.
Very good. I am glad you answered it. And absolutely. Niranjan Kumar Damodaran has got a wonderful question. He's asking, is it necessary to provide extinguisher inside the lift cabin, the fireman's lift?
Well, I do not know where all we will provide fire extinguishers. No, it's not something that is practical.
It's not that. I know you will take over the space also. Prakash Hegde is another one, where the fireman's lift need to be accessible to terrace floor level, especially for high-speed residential building. Doesn't specifically mention about the same, but local for officers, consultants, some of them insist. Is it necessary, especially the fireman's lift?
No, it's not necessary because the moment we take it to the terrace, the hoist, the overhead and the machine room also extends that much higher. So it's not necessary.
And the pressurization won't be there. And the pressurization won't be there. Okay. So that's a clear answer. We got Harish Chandlekar asking a very interesting question. Do we need fire lift lobby pressurization when lobby is located in between fire lift and staircase and both are pressurized? Lobby does not open into corridor, rather it opens into the pressurized staircase. I think this also partly you have given in your response already on the pressurization issue within or in the lobby. That 4 or 5 times you said that.
So lobby needs to be protected. Let me not say pressurization. The lobby needs to be protected against water, fire, smoke. How you do it, I mean, I'm not an expert for that.
Yeah.
So I will not comment on it, but this is the protection is what is required.
I think that's the perfect answer that you've given. All the three.
How about fire curtain using? Fire curtain, will it help?
In front of the elevator?
Not front of the...
Yeah. Or
lobby.
Would Warik Saab like to add something on that question?
No, lobby, okay, but how you can prevent the water? Fire curtain is not waterproof, no? So smoke or heat you can limit for certain time.
Yeah.
But pressurization is must.
Must.
Yes.
Right, you're right. But you're also concerned that in case that lobby is also sprinklered, then you will have a problem, isn't it? Then the water will come.
Yeah, that is true, area. But there is nothing to burn as such. Some heat is coming from other areas to that particular lobby, then only that sprinkler will get activated. Otherwise,
absolutely.
in lobby, nothing is there to burn as such.
I think that's a very nice logical reply on that. Thank you so much, sir. Labu Wagazia has got a very interesting, how to reach the information in the NBC. You have told in terms of the provision. TAC rightly said there are a lot of disconnect between all involved to do away with fire incidents. A lot of fire incidents have happened in COVID care hospitals, mainly for electrical faults. I know this is not the topic we already covered in one more next week we are going to cover on the same thing on hospital and fire safety related component, and more so due to electrical short circuit. So I would advise not to take that at the present time. We can leave it at that. Okay. Okay. We can leave it at that. Vinay Gupta is the one minimum cabin size for stretcher lifts, especially the evacuation one.
Okay. Again, I would refer to section 5A, part 8 of the National Building Code, which does talk about the minimum sizes that are required. So there is a differentiation between a standard stretcher and a bed lift. And that's something that we need to very crucially understand. The difference needs to be understood. Is it just for a stretcher or is it a full bed?
Yeah.
So this is defined. This is defined in table 19 of section 5A, part 8, National Building Code of.
Yeah. So Vinayji, therefore I hope you get the clarification. Kindly get into the code, go to table 19, we get a differentiation on the stretcher and the bed lift. My namesake, somebody is asking a question, Suresh, yes, but different. Does fire tower require 2 fire doors? Fire tower, because the sketch you showed over there. So in that 1 door, 2 doors are there. The question is, does fire tower require 2 fire doors? Maybe Warik Saab can reply.
Yes. It requires 2 doors. One from the common lobby, entry should be given to the lift lobby. So that door should have the 2 hours fire rating, first fire door. And second, from the lift lobby, there should be entry to the fire escape staircase. So that entry should be again protected with 2 hours fire rated fire door.
Because the sketch that was shown by Jack clearly shows the 2 doors. Thanks for that. And more importantly, the clarification, abundant clarification. Mr. Ahmad Tawfiq has got a very interesting question. He is referring to NFPA 5000. Buildings over 3 stories require a fire lift and a fire lift lobby arrangements with access to exit stair that can accommodate an ambulance stretcher, and would also require at least 2 fire lifts lobby. But however, in buildings exceeding 36.6 meter, they have a provision there. Is it also covered in the NBC? Is the direct question asking on that. Okay. NFPA 5000 provision, is it also provided in the NBC? That's the question.
So the National Building Code requires a fire lift for anything above 15 meters.
Yeah.
And that's an 8-passenger lift, a small elevator. Above 60 meters, it requires a minimum of 15 passenger lift. Above 30 meters, it requires a stretcher lift.
Yeah, there you are, Ahmad. We have got a much provisions much beyond what NFPA 5000 has indicated. Thank you so much for your question. Rishikesh Bhagwat is one of our. I think this you already answered, but so I'm glad the question has come. Is fire lift, fireman lift, fire evacuation lift, ELD same? I think you already have answered abundantly, but if you want to give one more.
No, I'll just say it once again. Fire lift is the short form for fireman's lift. Let's stop using the word fire lift. It is a fireman's lift. The fireman's lift and the fireman evacuation lift are supposed to be one and the same. However, there is something which is an occupant evacuation lift, which is different.
Which is
emergency lowering device is emergency lowering device is ELD, I presume, is emergency lowering device. That's not something that NBC covers, or in my opinion is a valid way of doing something. It's like a fix for something which has gone wrong, like the emergency shoots and stuff like that that we had.
I think abundant clarity is required on that. But what is important is after 9/11, you brought in the very important thing of assisted evacuation that's coming for passengers of difficult situation or whatever, where you require that to be done. And therefore, very clear critically, but otherwise, fire lift and firemen are the same, but the remaining one is brought out very well. Suvek Salanka has got, of course, a question which is also answered now. Any specific area requirement of lift lobby in fire tower? Maybe Saab can take it, Warik Saab can take it, because he says specifically it's not in NBC, but I thought the dimension is there. Any specific area for lift lobby in fire tower? Because NBC seems to be silent on this.
That is true. For the normal lift lobby, yes, it is optional. But for fire tower, definitely there is a lift lobby required, which should be protected with 2 hours fire rated fire door. So that requirement is specified.
Size of the lobby. He's asking about the size.
Size of the lobby.
His question is exactly that, because he feels this seems to be left out. He says any specific area requirement of the lift lobby in fire tower.
Yeah, that is not been specified, but
so we'll take care of it. We'll clarify that when the new revision comes, as convener and TAC Matthew, chairman, has already indicated there. We will include all those areas where some things are not clear. we'll bring it out in the next version. But it's an area which seems to be wanting attention. Manjula wants a question on that. Is it a good practice to eliminate sprinklers in the lift lobbies? Not necessarily. Why should you eliminate? She's asking a question. She's asking a question, but normally we provide, isn't it?
You can provide, but the principle is to ensure that that protected lobby, the sprinkler never works. It's never required to work because it is as fireproof can be.
Yeah. So therefore, it won't come in, as Warwick Saab said, it will not come into operation because there's no fire that has come for the sprinkler to get into operation. Thank you. Well, our own dear friend Satish Iyengar has asked, any speed restriction for fireman's lift? Nice question.
No, there's no restriction. Yes, there is a restriction that it should not, from top to bottom, minimum 60 seconds.
Got it, Satish ji? I hope.
Okay, no, I just need to issue one clarification here.
Yeah.
This is not the minimum speed requirement for elevators for a building.
Yeah.
The reason why 60 seconds is put in because there is an assumption that the elevator that will be provided as a fireman's lift is going to be the service lift, where normally the speed tends to be low. So the idea is to ensure that the speed doesn't get lowered that much.
Okay.
So ideally, it should be much better than 60 seconds. Maybe 35 to 45 seconds, what it should be.
Would be a good one. So Satish, you got a very detailed reply for your question. Thank you. Thank you, Tak. Suvek Salanka, can you provide evacuation lift opening in the mid landing?
Part is dangerous.
Eh?
It is totally dangerous.
Yeah. I think Warwick Sir feels it's a dangerous one to put mid landing. And what do you say, sir?
Part 4 prohibits it.
Yeah, that's it. So you got a direct answer. Suvek Salangaji, no doing. Shivaji Dodampudi wants to know what is the meaning of elevator lobby protected. Of course, I think primarily has not understood that particularly. Everybody knows a protected lobby. But any clarification? 1 second, one word, or a sentence for
water,
elevator
fire,
lobby
smoke.
protected.
Protected from water, fire, smoke.
That's it. All the three. You got it, Shivaji? Got it. Vinod Kumar has a question. He's asking this question directly to Mr. Matthews only. When we have a set of 4 lifts and the lift lobby becomes bigger and pressurizing this will be a challenge. But if it is done properly, he's asking a wonderful teaser question to you. Can you use all the 4 lifts as fireman's lift?
There is nothing that stops you from using all elevators as fireman's lift. The only thing is that you need to have backup power for all 4.
That's that. They got that. We got the real answer, which normally would be giving it only for the designated fireman's lift. Okay. So Vinod, you got a good reply. Okay. We got Marutesha Totada, who was saying, what is the lifetime or what is the type of life for this elevator and escalator? 10 years, 20 years, and whatever renewal licensing process. Of course, you require a lift inspectorate requires a renewal, but primarily is on the ropes and other safety aspect, annual renewal certificate. But otherwise, the life of the lift and escalator, some indication?
It's a very wide thing. I mean, it can be 15 years for something that is badly,
that's what I said,
badly
15,
maintained.
20 years, I said.
I mean, I know elevators which are in excellent shape even after 40 years. So it's a very... but then having said that, in recent times, the life has been going lower and lower. It's almost like our cars where after earlier 30 years, it would survive. Today, 5 years, you have a tough time. So it's almost like
in Mumbai and Kolkata, you can still find that old elevator with the wooden frames with over 50 years still operating wonderfully.
Okay. I think we leave that. But I think as a renewal is concerned, Marutesha, you have clear requirement that as per the lift inspectorate, you require every year annual renewals because he's asking a renewal. The renewal is required each year, but the building license will not be coming once you get an occupant certificate. Lift installation is the one thing you require annual renewal certificate, must over there. Prakash Hegde wants to have, can lift doors be of glass as done in many metro stations in Bangalore? So he's quoting, but that's only a single or double storied building, most of the metro one. But I think he's putting a very important thing. If in a metro related one, you can have a lift door can be glass. Can glass be ever used? I don't think in any case.
I mean, I think Deepak would probably be better positioned to answer it.
Deepak?
The door expert.
Yeah.
That's a nice question. Can lift doors be made of glass at all? As done in many metro stations in Bangalore? Question mark.
Yes, it is possible. Like I said, lift landing doors, whether it is glass door or a vision door or a standard door. If you need a fire-rated 2 hours fire-rated glass door, it is definitely possible.
So that means that glass door should be fire rated for what, 60 minutes. Am I right?
I'm saying that it is possible, but it is expensive. That's why people don't specify it as a fire-rated glass doors.
Okay, so it's a moderate cost over there. Okay,
Yes.
right. Then the next question is from Sharfraz Sheikh. Sharfraz Sheikh wants, if building its height is more than 60 meters, is it necessary to put a 15 passenger, which you mentioned, sir, tax, sir, 15 passenger fireman's elevator, or can we consider 8 passenger also?
Okay, the size of the elevator first has to be established based on traffic analysis, what the building requires.
Yes.
Above 60 meters, the minimum is established as 15 passenger for the very simple reason that I had explained. That for a fireman to use the firefighting lift, there is a certain process. And if I remember right, I mean, Mr. Wari could confirm it, there are 5 people that are required.
Also.
5 people with their equipment and with their protective gear will not fit into an 8-passenger elevator.
Space needed. Warik sir, will you like to open out?
Yes, that is a crew. One crew is required, no? So minimum 5 persons will go with BA sets and equipment. So space is required.
Okay, so that means any building more than 20 stories or 60 meters, absolute necessary, or 15 passenger should be the fireman's elevator. Thank you very much. We got Labu Bagasi asking a question.
Sir, I want to interrupt here. Now 15 people elevator above 20. I don't see, I mean, I live in Bangalore, but I don't see many of the residential apartment which is around 40 floor don't have that. How do you?
No. 1 minute. Dominic, what you're saying is a different, it will come in a different question. What doesn't happen in large number of building is not what the requirement of the code is. The provisions of the code is what is needed. And as per the code that is needed. But many buildings do not have those particular, compliance is not there. Enforcement is not there. There are many buildings in Mumbai, which are more than 30 floors, only single staircase there. But that's not what is required. You require 2 staircase. But those are all old legacy over there. But then don't mix up what is requirement with that particular thing. We'll come back on that with another related questions coming on that between NBC and provisions of the states, which is also very briefly touched by TAC. I would have a reply coming from both of them also on that. So that answers. So his question is that is smoke stop door and smoke zone requirements, stop zone compartment creation listed as the mandatory norms. Mandatory for smoke stop door or smoke stop zone compartment as a mandatory requirement. I think under smoke control, the provisions on the things are there primarily when smoke comes, so it's primarily extraction, removal of the smoke is a major area. If I'm not mistaken, Warik sir, you are a specialist of smoke control.
No, smoke control. One is it means removing the smoke from the basement or the upper floors, or hospital or hotel industries. Normally, they provide such type of ducting system to remove heat and smoke from the building. But here specifically, if you want to protect the lift and the staircase, the pressurization with the backup, so that no heat and smoke can enter into it, and it is a safe passage throughout the building for reaching the firefighters on upper floor in the quickest time, so that firefighting and rescue operation can be started immediately.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Next one, of course, from Labu is a larger question. Fire tank capacity criteria, should it be linked with the building height or occupancy sensitive and population?
So fire tank capacity, it is what is your requirement for the biggest system. So if you have the sprinkler, you have the hydrant, hose reel. So cumulatively, you have to calculate the water requirement for every system and what is the total piping going on. So if you provide only 50,000 liters for the 45-meter building height with sprinklers and everything is provided, and the floor plate is more, then your entire water will go in the pipeline itself. There will be no water available in case of emergency.
So it depends upon the space, the building space, horizontal and vertical together, and all the fire requirement, how much is the water. But there are clear provisions indicated in the NBC on what shall be the minimum
storage
the respective,
on that. You have to see the respective IS specification for the sprinkler and hydrant, provided the requirement for the minimum water requirement.
One question which is called Rajan Agarwal, of course, is name the good Indian fire rating or agency or consultant. Of course, we have a large number of them available now, but it's a good thing that they're looking for the best possible inputs are coming in this particular area. Anything else you want to add on that? Any of you? Good fire rating agencies. That means who can say a fire consultant? I think that there's a good list available, I thought now, with the MEPF consultants, no? Am I right?
Yes, there are a number of agencies available. Internationally also, you can hire them and share their your requirements with them.
Yes, sir. Ratnakar Achari seems to be an interesting question. Elevator shunt feature, power supply cutoff is mandatory for fireman's lift. Obviously, how can you have that? So that question which you briefly said, sir, that you should take that. Elevator shunt features.
The shunt feature is in the eventuality of a water where the elevator shuts off on its own. Okay, to protect the elevator. It's not required. It's not. If you look at A17.1, it's very clear that for a fireman's lift, you should not have the shunt.
Okay, right. Then he's also linking to the, is it important to connect refuge areas to a fire shaft, or it could be with a staircase being used for evacuation? Of course, refuge area, you have told so much refuge area to provide, and from the refuge area for them to go beyond that. Nothing to do with the specific topic we are discussing on lifts, fire lifts.
Mr. Suresh, it's a very valid thing. In fact, I had a slide which, because of the time paucity, I didn't put across. So,
Please
if you have many buildings, you have the refuge area in one location.
Yeah.
The fireman's lift in one location, the stairs in one location.
Yeah.
How does it help? If the people are in the refuge area and you need to rescue them,
yes,
if these are in 4 different locations, you're defeating the purpose. You've provided it. It's like the nirvana that I was talking about. You have the knowledge or the wisdom, but finally when it came together, it is in 4 different corners. Doesn't help.
No, so he's asking, should that be done through a fire shaft or through a separate staircase for them to evacuate out?
No. As per the National Building Code, Part 4 requirement now for high-rise buildings, the refuge area shall be connected with the fire tower itself. So there should be direct entry from the fire tower to the refuge area. So
to that area.
Yes. So that is a mandatory requirement now.
Okay. Akash Garg has got an interesting question. Can a fire tower have natural ventilation or pressurization is must? Question.
You have to follow table 8 given in part 4 of National Building Code, wherein there is allowance up to 30-meter building height. If you have the cross ventilation, you can provide only cross ventilation. You don't have to provide the pressurization. So just go through the table 8 of.
But beyond 30 meters must.
Yes, pressurization is required.
Must. Okay, that's the answer. Akash, dekh lo. Akshay Garg. Jaivir Singh has got a nice question. We must consider training the staff who are basically permanent employees to use the lift. What is the occupants of the building itself should have some amount of understanding of the regular lifts and the other one. I'm sure this is a, both of you agree with that. No, there is a.
Yeah, I think part 4 talks about section 4.10 and 4.11 talks about fire officer, fire drills, and fire orders. So it's has to be a consolidated thing. It is required. It is a must.
Okay, thank you.
So we have 2 minutes more to go. We have just 2 minutes to go.
Yeah, I'm doing at the super speed here because it's not my problem. You people come after the time. Because Kurduka has got a nice question, which is important. I'll try to push it. Continuity of power supply, including switch gear reliability, is most important. Fire lift, in the case of fire lift, how it can be ensured best manner to ensure continuous power. Fire lifts. Reliability of power.
Continuity of power, including switchgear reliability, is most important in case of emergency. I don't think I have a right answer to that. I do not know.
Can we have a separate power link for the particular fire lifts? That's a question.
No, that is there. That has to be provided. You need to have the cable running through the hoistway.
Yeah, so the answer partly comes there, and let that not be coming in the circuit breaker there. Okay. Om Prakash Raja could like, is it required to have landing at fire check door? Fire check floor? Come on, what question is that?
No, fire check floors have stopped now. It's no longer a requirement.
That's what I thought. It's irrelevant. Can service shafts open into fire lift lobby? Service shafts. Service shafts can be opened into fire lift lobby.
No, normally no. Only firefighting shaft should. Otherwise, no electrical and other services should open in the fire tower.
Is staircase pressurization required till basement levels? Suresh, my namesake is asking. Yes. not me.
If it is communicating to basement, then it should be protected with fire rating lobby.
Okay, Manoj Hegde wants, when we have large campuses, multiple buildings, we have common set of fire pumps and fire tank. Is it okay?
For 100 hydrant pumps, there should be one pump set. On the same tank, if you have the sufficient centralized tank, which may be 6 lakhs or 8 lakhs liters,
Yeah.
you can
Okay.
have the multiple number of pump set on the same tank, catering to again 100 numbers of hydrants. So
Especially
that
podium link buildings will have this particular thing
yes,
very much right. Am I right, sir? Thank
yes,
you.
yes.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it at that. I got 3 very fast. I think we leave out the refuge area question. Another question is fire tower requirement followed mandatory at the time of fire approval?
Yes, it is mandatory.
It's mandatory now. There is one related question which came over there. I didn't open that between the National Building Code and various states have got, each state is trying to interpret based on their own way. They add on little, subtract some, etc., etc. And therefore, how do you ensure a uniformity coming into all the fire regulation to be operated by all the states? Is a maybe partly TAC can take it, partly can be taken by Santosh. I'll close with that question. I won't ask anything more. Okay.
From an elevator perspective, I know that having different requirements per state actually, has a problem because suppliers, it's not as if we have got huge volumes.
Yeah.
They are not going to design products individually for states. So immediately, if you have different requirements, there's going to be a compromise. And I keep saying again and again, one country, one code, one rule.
That's where it should be. So, what do you say, Santosh ji?
Yes. Actually, when we have a separate act for the controlling or regulating the lifts, and there is a means Indian standards available, international best practices available. So we have to follow that, ensuring safety of the occupants. So considering all that, we should have the whatever the national level benchmarks are there that should be followed scrupulously. We should not play with the life of the people.
Yes, sir. Even though one question of Abu Wagasia is there, in building more than 60 meters, how many staircases? Needless to say, more than 15 meters, you require 2. I don't even get into that particular. Another question by Suvek is that pressurization is not required to external wall staircase. That's like a fire tower.
Yes, fire tower, but it should be a cross ventilated. It should not be closed with the cladding again.
Yes.
Then it is of no use.
I think we should stop with that particularly. We have taken half an hour beyond
Suresh,
our thing.
before you close out, I would just like to once again, appreciate, having an opportunity with Mr. Santosh Warik and Deepak from Vittur. Like I said, 11 years back when I started this journey of understanding fire and elevators, Santosh Warik was there. Vittur was there. Of course, Deepak was not there at that particular point of time. And it really has helped me grow in this particular thing. Thanks a lot. So for me, in many ways, this has been the highlight.
And the session is also generated so much amount of interest. We had questions, so many number of questions. I thought it was 25. Finally, after we started the Q&A, another 9 more got added. We are now at 36 questions now. So I try to cover all of them possible. And thank you very much for the speed with which the replies have come based on the speed which I raised the questions also. And I think this is a very useful session. And I'm very happy that even now at this point of time, there are so many people still participating in the session. They are not left that. That shows the interest that is having. And therefore, having one more round next week, Dominic, on the fire in hospital, Kaho involved.
Yes,
I think that aspect you didn't bring it out, Dominic. You may like to say.
Yeah, I will.
You should tell about that. So thank you very much on my behalf as a moderator. Thank you very much, Tak Matthew, sir.
So I won't leave you. I have one question to you, sir. I have one question to you as a president of Focus. Do you think that integrating all these critical services is very important? And what would all the professional gain from the Focus?
Well, I think you answered it many times in the beginning over there. There's a classic case where issues related to lift installation has got fire safety issue. Lift issues related to air conditioning installation got linking with the fire issue. Anything with the electrical installation has got a direct link with the fire safety. So all these issues are interrelated. Critical utility services is one area where the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, firefighting specialists who have to work along with the architect and the civil engineer or the structural engineer, they're going to put all their integrated together. They all come in a space, and there's a competition of space for each of the installation coming over there. And therefore, safety of one will link with the other one. Add on to that the new dimension of infection in hospital and the type of problems fire is caused because of the type of issues in the hospital, in the OT and the ICU. Absolutely, there's a clear-cut requirement, as I am able to see, and that's why focus is growing. Focus seminars have become the talking point all over. You're getting such excellent response coming is primarily because these all used to be discussed in silos. Air conditioning separate, lift separate, fire separate, electrical installation separately, etc., etc. Here we are able to see the integrated and coordinated approach with a comprehensive approach that's required. But all of them are going to come into building. At the end of the day, it has got to serve not only all the users are there in the building, plus all those people are governing on the assets and facility management as well. And I think, fortunately, Focus is the only platform in the globe. Globally, there's no other platform like this where all the critical utility services are given a common platform to discuss all these issues. I think that will be a short answer. Later on.
Thank you, President. Dear participant, we had 758, registration. Out of that, we have seen 390 participants for this session. Is almost 390. It's a very good score for all of us, and I'm sure Santosh Warik and Tak and Pradeep would have enjoyed this session and very technical, informative webinar. And next week, fire happens in building. You can't say the building 100% fire safe. It can be a small fire, it can be medium fire, it can be a large fire. But how do you prevent this fire not spreading to other floor or other departments? So we are covering this subject of containing the fire and spread of fire in hospitals and building. Very important subject will be addressed by Abhishek Chabra from Thomas Bell Wright, and we have General Secretary of CAVO. CAVO is the technical body for hospitals, and Dr. Vijay Agrawal will be giving the keynote address. I would request everyone who have participated in today's webinar to come back and participate in this very important subject. So I move on to the closing.
1 minute, Dominic. Before you close, give me half a minute. I forgot to make a mention, even though I brought out all the things. There was one question, observation towards the end of the meeting, which came not on the Q&A box, but on the chat box. And that came from Abhishek Chabra. And when Deepak was presenting all the details on the fire test related aspects on the fire doors, when he was explaining that, Abhishek chipped in with the thing that I'll be most happy to share the type of experience, expertise, and the background available with his organization on the subject, and he'll be very happy to share that particular thing with all the participants. I forgot to make a mention of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek, for sharing that information. We'll ask them to connect with you. And we now have our General Secretary, Mr. Riel Nasiman, a most experienced person and with huge responsibility, General Secretary of Focus. So I would now request our General Secretary to give a word of thanks.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Dominic. Good evening, everyone. We had a very nice session today, spread over more than 110 minutes. On behalf of Focus, the Management Council, I thank each one of you for joining in today's webinar. And today's webinar, as Mr. Dominic mentioned, attracted an overwhelming response of over 780 registrations and with over 319 participants when it was at its peak. We witnessed great knowledge sharing sessions and takeaways from the 4 distinguished panelists in today's webinar who are stalwarts in their respective fields. I thank our President, Mr. V. Suresh, for moderating today's session. And my special thanks to Mr. Tak Matthews, Mr. Santosh Warik, Mr. Deepak Prashant, and Mr. Arul Prakash Tangapan for their presentation in today's event. Our sincere thanks to the sponsor of today's webinar, Mrs. Vitur and Mr. Suraj Todimar, for supporting us in this endeavor. A sincere thanks to Mr. KP Dominic, our Chairman, Events and Marketing, and also Regional Chair South, for being the host for today's webinar. Ms. Mamata Nagaraj for ensuring that the invitations are sent on time and for coordinating in today's event. It was a great evening, and I'm sure that each one of you would have gained great knowledge from today's webinar. As I keep saying always, focus as a sapling was planted by 14 stalwarts from the critical utility services sector on 26th October 20 and is expected to grow huge over a period of time. The fruits of this tree will be shared by each one of us if we are all aligned with it. It will provide shade for all of us to integrate and grow. My sincere request to all the participants in today's event is to become members of Focus and support in its endeavor to be a formidable organization. As already mentioned, the next webinar is happening on the 28th of this month on the topic
24th on Thursday.
24th of June this month, and it is on contain and prevent spread of fire in hospitals. Thank you very much once again for participating, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next
I think
webinar.
for the many people who asked a question, even though clarified on the chat box there by Dominic, all these things that today's presentations, question answer, everything will be loaded, and on the Monday he has promised that will be all available to all the participants. I just thought
we will
I'll
share
give
to all
them a
these
clarification
758 participants, all the videos through YouTube.
I saw
link
you
we'll
gave the
sharing.
reply on the chat box, but since that question has come many times, okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Special thank to Santosh Warik Saab, who will never say no to us. Whenever we have gone, he say yes. So that's a very motivational, very inspiring personality. I will love him very much. I wish you all the very best, sir.
Can I make a suggestion? Can I make a suggestion? Because the other question which came over there, can we organize an event wherein we get in about 5 or 6 fire chiefs from maybe Chennai, Bangalore, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Calcutta, Delhi, like that. A session in which we can have them all the concerns on this particular thing, wherein we discuss with the regulator, what are their concerns, what is it they want, what type of support needed, is the problem builders, the type of thing. I think Focus can initiate a very good session on that. How do you like that, Warik sir?
Yes, it can be. Because implementation is a real challenge, and everywhere
enforcement, like the question that he asked, in a building of so many stories, he says nothing is available. Nothing will be available because it's not part of the rules there. Number one, they don't have an act over there. They're not adopted NPC or some other inferior document or superior document, whatever. So I think it's a larger issue. I think we will have a session exclusively coming and identify a session exclusively that I'm sure it's going to be very enjoyable.
Yeah, we will have at the end of our webinar series, we will have just purely Q&A. Ask your question to fire chiefs. So
wonderful.
Ask your question to fire chiefs.
And we can get NAFO also involved.
Yes, sir.
That's the National Association of Fire Officers. Okay.
Yes, sir. We will do that, sir. I will talk to Deshmukh sir and Santosh sir and all that. We'll coordinate that.
But couldn't make it the last minute. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nandu. Thank you, Tak. See you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Santosh ji, once again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Tak.
Thank you, Deepak. I didn't formally thank you. Deepak, it was good. Your presentation was good on fire dose, all the test related component on that.